We are on a mission to save and revitalize independent pharmacy. On the Catalyst podcast, we dive into current events that are shaping how pharmacists approach their patients and their businesses. Fuel your passion for pharmacy, one conversation at a time.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
Welcome to the Catalyst Pharmacy Podcast. I'm your guest host, Doug Hoey, NCPA CEO, and today's a little bit different in that Jeff Key, the CEO of PioneerRx, is in the hot seat, along with Kraig McEwen, the CEO of RedSail, and of course their companies just merged together or acquired. So, Kraig, Jeff, thanks for being on your podcast today.
I'm glad to be on our podcast. Thank you, Doug, for hosting us.
My pleasure. Well, let's get to it. So there is this partnership not only with NCPA and CPSN, but with independent pharmacy. This partnership from Pioneer. So how will things be different? How will that change with RedSail, Francisco Partners now? And in fact, that may actually be one of the places I think that'd be interesting for the viewers is talk about the actual structure a little bit. So RedSail owned by Francisco Partners. Where does Pioneer fit within RedSail? Is Pioneer change its name like QS1 did? How will we refer to Pioneer going forward?
Yeah, we think the Pioneer brand's awesome, and we think the mission of Pioneer to save and revitalize independent pharmacy is perfect. And so if you think about what have we been doing from a RedSail perspective? So RedSail purchased Smith Technologies. Part of the reason we changed the name to RedSail is because the Smith family wasn't going to sell their name. So RedSail purchased QS1, Integra, and also a non-pharmacy business called Public that was part of the Smith Technologies brand. And so the QS1 brand still very much exists, in the Integra brand, which is a brand that's more well known in the long-term care pharmacy space, still very much exists. The Pioneer brand will not only exist, but you'll see us invest and help to make it thrive. We think it's an incredibly important brand in the industry, and in our opinion, one that we should equate with innovation and transformation of the industry. And while we will continue to also accelerate and make aware the RedSail brand, we definitely will be helping Jeff continue to expand the Pioneer brand.
So Kraig, and actually, I'm sure many of the viewers, they know Jeff, although we're going to want to probe Jeff just a little bit. But before then, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I went on and did as much investigation as I could over the weekend about you. Looks like you're a Pittsburgh guy.
I am a Pittsburgh guy. I'm in mourning from the game last night, but
well, still, I think they're
11-2, but who's counting?
Right. Although the last two games, but anyway, no, they're well positioned. So tell us a little bit. Tell me. This is the first time we've met.
Yeah.
So tell the viewers a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am a Pittsburgh guy. I've lived out of this Pittsburgh for a while. My wife and I have 2 children, and our families are both from the areas, and it's an important part of our story. So Pittsburgh's we call home base. My background is really for the last 20 plus years in healthcare technology broadly, but radiology and cardiology for about 10 of that, and pharmacy for the last 10 to 12 years. And been involved with 3 primary pharmacy technology businesses, a business that we pulled out of McEwen in the health system pharmacy space that we rebranded Ascent, that was originally in robots and cabinet business. We transformed that business into an enterprise medication management software business and IV robotics business in the health system space. Most recently was the co-founder of a specialty pharmacy technology service business called TrellisRx. I still chair that board. And that's a Francisco owned business. And that business was really focused on trying to transform how specialty care is delivered through pharmacy clinical services and data. And really not a lot different in many ways. I think about the independent pharmacy market. We looked at the specialty pharmacy market and looked at CVS and Walgreens using a model that we knew was clinically inferior for patients. And we set out to prove that, and the company is doing extremely well proving that for health systems. And I think it's a very similar area in independent pharmacy. One of the reasons why I've worked with Francisco Partners for about the last 10 years is we really like to go into markets that we think are important markets that frankly deserve some disruption technologically. And we think independent pharmacy is that. And we see a market where the best clinical care is being provided, but not being shined a light upon as much as you can. And we think Pioneer is going to be an important part, and some of the investments we think would like to add to that to help drive that. So that's probably a quick tour around my background.
Yeah, and we'll have more about Francisco Partners, or at least we'll have more questions about that. I think, and I do have one other question before we move over to Jeff for a second, and that is, Jeff, you invited me to do this reverse podcast, and at first I was not sure I wanted to do it because we're not going to do. We had some concerns when I heard that Pioneer had been sold, which has been a rumor for a long time, or at least over a year. At least I've heard some rumors. That when I actually heard the news, I thought, oh man, here we go again. And so when you asked me to do this, I thought, well, I'm not willing to do some kind of cream puff interview because our members are interested. Our members want to know. And when I say here we go again, it's really our members thinking that. And so, I appreciate. I mean, you've said that pretty much anything within reason goes here, and I think that's important that be said. That's the ground rules that you've established, you and Kraig, or Kraig and you. And
so no cream puff interview. That means you left your fanny pack at home.
See, that's just
those who want to know. But those who want to know about that have to look at our other podcast with Doug. So that's just a little teaser for there. If you want to learn about the fanny pack, go see the other podcast.
And the fanny pack was actually an army belt from the Korean War. So it was as macho and tough as you can get for any 8-year-old kid, but find out for yourself. Kraig, so one key question that folks will have. So Pioneer, has the mission to revitalize and save pharmacy, which I love that because that's NCPA as well. How does that change with RedSail, Francisco Partners ownership, or does it change at all? Or, I mean, you alluded to it in your previous answer, but give the audience a sense to, what does that stay the same? Does that what happens with that?
The Pioneer business is going to run for all intents and purposes as an independent business within RedSail, with a couple caveats that I'll talk about in a second. I think important caveats, but the mission of Pioneer, I think one of the most important things Jeff and I, our jobs is to make sure it doesn't change. The mission of, we like Pioneer because of the purity of mission and the great technology, and when you go look at the customer loyalty scores and net promoter scores, they're world class. That doesn't happen accidentally. I've run a lot of businesses, and so to me, the mission, the technology innovation, and the customer support model are core to the value we knew we were buying, and so that's really important. So that mission shouldn't change. What we should do at the RedSail level is add upon it, and I think we're 9,000 locations strong now, and I think with that comes a responsibility, and the responsibility, in my opinion, is to deal with the reality in the room in independent pharmacy. When Jeff and I have talked over the last few months as we've been getting to know one another, if you look at our data, while we're competitors in the market, and Pioneer has done a great job in the market, an amazing job in the market, the number one competitor is stores closing and stores being sold to CVS and Walgreens. And I think our job as part of this is to leverage the investment wherewithal that we have to really try to build the most clinically focused and cost-effective pharmacy network in the country. That's going to be a hard job, and that's going to require a lot of dollars and investment and strategy that Pioneer on its own doesn't have, or QS1 on its own doesn't have. And one of the things we like about the independent pharmacy market, we think there's an opportunity to use pharmacy management systems and yes, to use some of the data to prove the clinical value of independent pharmacy in the United States, and then take that right back to pharma and take it right back to the payers and start shining a light on that and saying, you got to give us a seat at the table. But to do that, you're going to have to bring those 9,000 pharmacies to bear, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we're not Doug, you don't want to stand back and say, oh, we're a charity. That's hey, we're a charity. We went and looked for some funding. One of my heroes, Zig Ziglar, said it best as he said, you can have anything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want. And Pioneer's theme with the Save and Revitalize Independent Pharmacy is if you can help them be successful, profits are going to come. It's going to be a side effect of that you're not going to be able to stop. And an interesting thing about this deal, and you can talk about rumors for a year or so, but PioneerRx didn't go out to bid. They didn't get this book out there and say, hey, let's get the highest bidder. I get 3 people a week emailing me saying, hey, we're interested in talking about selling your company. The management team went to Morrison-Dixon about a year ago and told them that we believed that we would benefit from different ownership. And we really looked out there. We had tried to buy our combined with QS1 before RedSail. And I think the Smith family had some concerns about the Dixons getting more power or whatever going on. That didn't happen. But we looked. We talked to the RedSail group, first of all, just because they had QS1. And we believe size is one of those things that you needed if we were going to save. We didn't believe that we could do what we needed to do to save independent pharmacy in the time frame we had without some investment in dollars and with some type of secret sauce. So people who had more experience, et cetera. We looked along with the Dixons, came along with RedSail. The group that they chose to lead that are exceptional, and it was a really good choice.
So Jeff, just you mentioned Morrison-Dixon and the Dixon family, and I think probably most people watching this podcast may know that when you look at the Morrison-Dixon wholesaler company, the Dixons are the family that are still running the company. They've run the company for over, I think it's 175 years.
Yep.
Does that sound?
Yep. Sounds about right.
So how did they own all of Pioneer? Did they own kind of, what was that? I mean, to the extent, without getting way deep in the weeds, but that transaction, was that a 100% equity transaction, Francisco to the Dixons, or kind of what was the exact ownership structure?
Pioneer was owned by Dixon Holdings, 100%. They, a company called New Tech Computer Systems, the parent of the current generation of Dixons, went to MIT back when computers were just getting started after the Army, decided that pharmacy needed computers, created a company called New Tech Computer Systems to keep his kids out of the technology. That company grew into, they had one of the first pharmacy systems not long after QS1 had theirs, and really successful to their customers, about 500 customers. They tried to rebuild that software a couple of times, weren't successful in it. They found me and brought me in and said, hey, can you build a Windows-based pharmacy system? I had some if. I had been reading Good to Great, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do it unless your goal is to be the best. If you're just going to have a checkbox of Windows system, that's really not my next kind of goal in life. They bought off on it. I also said, hey, it needs to be wholesaler independent. So in this deal, I'm just an employee. So I plan to, a lot of people, first text message I got, well, Jeff, are you staying? It's like, yeah, where am I going? I'm staying this week just like I was staying 3 months ago. My goal is to be here for however long that we can continue to do what we need to do for the business. I can tell you I'm more excited now than, kind of I don't know that anybody would call me low energy, but even more energy than have, because there's so many things that are possibilities now. So many levers and knobs and things to try to make everything better.
You know, Jeff, I'm just going to read a few words that describe someone. Visionary.
Yeah, okay. I was afraid for a moment. Okay.
Yeah, compared to Steve Jobs, bullied as a child, grew up in South Africa. So I'm, of course, talking about Elon Musk here. And I bring that up because as I was thinking about this, again, many of much of the audience may know you, or maybe they don't, but I was thinking about really some comparisons in the pharmacy world between you and Elon Musk. And here's where my head was going with that was, you know, visionary, and I think you have and have had a vision for the Pioneer system, which has really upped the game for independent pharmacy. So it's been a big positive, as Elon Musk has done with electric vehicles and SpaceX and other things as well. But Elon Musk is a controversial figure, and within our small, pharmacy world, you've been a lightning rod, certainly a lightning rod within the pharmacy management system vendors. You have a strong personality, and in fact, the podcast that we did a couple months ago was really, I saw you in a whole new light. I mean, sort of relaxed, but you've been controversial among your peers, somewhat because you've created such a great product. How is your personality going to fit in with RedSail and the Francisco partner, private equity? How do you see that gelling or not gelling?
So I love the Elon Musk example because it kind of challenged me. I need to up my game. I need a little bit more crazy, I think, right? And I was just trying to think, what do I need to do to rise up to that example?
You're not gonna smoke pot on this podcast, are you?
Okay, no, I don't think
okay,
so.
Well, okay, so Elon did, but that was in California. So in Louisiana or Texas or Virginia,
Francisco Partners is in San Francisco, so there's probably some leeway there.
There you go.
How am I? I mean, one of the things you'll see from RedSail is a desire to, if you look at some of their internal slides, things do Pioneer no harm, don't mess up Pioneer. If change doesn't help them with their mission, don't do it. So a lot of really, this team gets it, and I think with any kind of energy, you have a little bit of crazy that comes in. For better or for worse, I would say about my peers, if they like me, I'm not doing my job.
You're doing a great job.
That's probably a little bit of an apology for not being as kind as maybe I should be. But hey, it's a competitive world, and I'm a competitor. I think one thing you'll learn about Kraig is he's really competitive too. One of the interesting things, he's been pretty successful in his lifetime. You heard he created a specialty company and stuff like that. He doesn't need the money, right? He's one of the things you learn about Kraig is we won't show that to Chris, but that he's really in there for the market and the competitive. And one of the things we found about Francisco Partners is they really believed that everything's got to be a win for, and I guess I could let Kraig say some of these things, but for the employee, for the customer, and for the stockholder. And all of it, Kraig says stockholders come and go, but a smart company realizes that all three of that's got to be healthy. Company values based on two things. It's based on your profits, but it's based on multipliers, and multipliers depend on the health of your market.
Kraig, you mentioned that you guys have been talking back and forth a lot, for obvious reasons. So early returns, how's the chemistry between you two so far?
Pretty good. He's got a sense of humor, which I love. Look, just brilliant. I mean that sincerely. When Jeff and I were talking, I've been in several. The company that I learned the most from when I was in was a company called MedRad in the radiology and cardiology space. If you ever want to go study a company that Good to Great was a book that we used religiously there. And That company grew over 20% top line for 20 plus years, great profitability, world-class net promoter score in every region of the world we were in. But I learned that culture was strategy from that company. And when we make investments from a Francisco partner standpoint, if you look at some of the pharmacy, you look at Cover My Meds. Cover My Meds was and is still an incredibly innovative company. I told Jeff, I've started companies, I've been part of small companies, but I'm not an entrepreneur. That when you sit and listen to Jeff is the true entrepreneur and visionary in this market. I think I'm really good at healthcare strategy and figuring out how to take these businesses and really add some fuel to the fire. And I really understand business operations, and I understand customer processes, but I don't have the skill set that Jeff does from an entrepreneurial standpoint. And so one of my jobs is to preserve and nurture that. If you go and you try to study a market and you try to study a business and you try to figure out, okay, who did things well and who did things not so well, and how do I prevent myself from doing dumb things as often as possible? One of my rules of thumb is how do we put a structure in place to let Jeff thrive? And part of my job is as the company grows, you have to put structure in place, right? And Jeff got some great structure in place at Pioneer. Again, you don't get the net promoter scores that Jeff has without it, but you can't put a corporate structure in place that smashes the innovation and quells the energy. As a company goes, I have a theme on how do you continue to grow small, and I think that's what one of the things we've got to think about as we've purchased Pioneer and as we think about what the right structure is. Pioneer's growing rapidly. How do we continue to nurture the business in a way that it continues to be able to grow small and feel like this energetic, vibrant company? You can't be in Jeff's president and not walk away feeling energized, right? And that's what you want. And I think that's where the magic we've got to preserve.
So Jeff, what about you? How's the chemistry on your side?
I think it's great. One of the ways that technology companies die is the owners look at it and go, "Oh my goodness, y'all made something. We got to come in here and protect it, and we got to fix it and organize it and all this stuff." And they bring in the MBAs, and the MBAs add all this structure and overly, and all the creative people kind of drift on to some other place, and that is exactly the opposite. They didn't bring in a bunch of MBAs. Really brought, that team is really their experience. Multiple of them have had multiple companies that they started, were successful. I think Kraig's selling himself short by saying he's not an entrepreneur. He's an idea guy. He's hardworking. What you want is somebody you're working for to work hard. A lot of times I try to get a hold of him. He's at a customer site. I mean, he's in there. He's got his arms rolled out. If it wasn't COVID, he'd be putting pills in a bottle right now. And that kind of I admire. What you don't want is somebody coming in and peeking in your window and telling you where to put your furniture. I don't want that ever in my life. But hey, you want to come live with me for a month and then give me advice where to put furniture? I love it. I love advice. I love ideas. If I thought we could do this on our own, I wouldn't have gone to the Dixons and said, I think we'd benefit from ownership that knows how to buy things and knows how to put some gas on there. So one of the things I was thinking about as, maybe I should go get an MBA, right? I don't have an MBA. Mine's electrical engineering and computer science. And I started looking around, and then I thought about, I'm about to get an MBA, right? I don't need to go to school for an MBA. I'm about to get it. So I'm super excited about the things and every opportunity that I'm going to have to learn from the experiences of these guys. It's a once in a lifetime. You don't often get that kind of experience. So one of the girls tells a story, Frances, that's just some amazing people. She's their chief strategy officer, and the guy she worked for at McEwen in kind of her learning and growing stages was on the 21 group from MIT that was counting cards and everything in Vegas. This kind of sharp kind of people, and you're getting around people who've been around sharp people, and and just the possibilities keep me up at night, right? I don't need an alarm. My goals wake me. So it's cool.
You know, Jeff, on the podcast you did where you interviewed me, you asked me about some of my very early days, kind of like, who am I, where did I start, and all that kind of stuff. But so I know this podcast is not about that. So I did a little bit of homework to kind of preempt. There's not a lot about you online, at least on your Facebook page. What I could glean from your Facebook page is that
I'm a Facebook voyeur. I apologize.
Yeah. No, I can appreciate that. I think I've posted maybe 3 times in the last 2 years. So no judgment here. Looks like you're a Aerosmith Steven Tyler fan, and you like Ray-Ban sunglasses. Are those
interesting? I'd say both of those are true. Yeah.
I'm just saying this is from your Facebook page. But as far as just a little bit about you, you're a Louisiana guy. You said Kraig's a Pittsburgh guy. You're a Louisiana guy. Went to high school there. Went to both of your degrees there. Did you graduate from high school in the early 80s?
Yes. 84.
Okay. 84. You need to update your page. It has a different year.
Uh-oh.
And then, like you said, you have a master's degree in computer systems technology. And then you're an electrical engineer too, which my wife, being an engineer, brings all kinds of preconceived stereotypes about engineers. And,
be careful there, Doug.
I know. I'm married to one, so I understand.
Yeah, wife might watch this.
And rumor has it he still codes in the Pioneer system, so those stereotypes might have some element of truth.
Well, to teach that course means, to be able to teach something means you're immersed in it and you really understand it. And you taught computer science at LSU for
4 years.
5 years?
4 years. 4-ish, yep.
Yeah. So give us just a little. Again, I know this podcast is not who is Jeff Key, but I don't know that the audience knows. They may know some of those things that I just mentioned. I don't know about the Aerosmith
I feel there's
stuff.
a little payback going on here, right?
A little bit.
We're looking for a fanny pack story.
I am looking for your fanny pack story that I so generously gave up. I'm sure it spiked the viewership. Give folks just a thumbnail about Jeff and things that just again growing up in Louisiana. What's the pathway that got you to pharmacy?
Yeah, so got a degree in electrical engineering, got out of that and went to work for a company called Factory Mutual Engineering. It's a large risk insurer. They insure people like General Motors, et cetera. And I worked on the side of the business that insures business interruption and equipment. So if you lose your computers, this is what happens. You lose this device that you got to get in Germany at 6-month lead time, how much money you lost, a lot about business interruption. We analyzed, I got to visit all kinds of fun. Every day was a field trip. Stroh's Brewery was one of my accounts. You're learning all these processes and trying to figure out what is the critical pathways where if something broke, they're going to be down for a long time and losing a lot of money. From that was a company out of the Boston area. I worked my way up in that company, got my master's in computer systems, and was actually working on a group that developed technology for their 1,000 field engineers worldwide. I left there when we had kids because I was commuting every other week and went to work for a company in Shreveport called Praxis. From there, I'd used some of my knowledge to develop a piece of software that allowed state government to connect with insurance companies. So boilers in equipment blow up and kill kids and people, and so laws were enacted. But the people who govern those laws in states don't actually have the resources to inspect it, so they make the person who insures it inspect it. And so there's this big mess related to, well, these exist, don't exist, these need to be inspected. So basically state government is managing a process that they don't have control over. Came up with an idea and patented it to create a web-based system that we gave away to the states that then the insurance companies could access in order to mark things inspected and to submit them, save them a bunch of money. Matter of fact, as of about 5 years ago, that was the only solution in the United States. The last competitor in that went out of business. It was that good and that piece. Toward the end of that, I had decided one of the problems we had in Louisiana was finding good software resources. So I took a little 4-year sabbatical and said, hey, I'm going to teach school. And I'm going to try to raise up developers that kind of get it all. They get the business side, kind of have some experience with certifications, and also have the degree. And did that for about 4 years. Knew it was going to be a thing I was going to do temporarily. My wife was in healthcare, so I'd kind of said, hey, my next thing I do is going to be in healthcare because healthcare is really screwed up. Early hospital software was really bad. And the Dixons came in. They needed somebody to build a new pharmacy system. And they actually brought me in to train their 3 or 4 developers to try to, hey, we keep doing this wrong. Can you help us figure out how to do it? Once they heard from some of the things I had to say and said in a couple of classes, they're like, hey, can you just come in and do this for us? And I said, okay, it has to be the best, has to be wholesaler independent. I had a couple of caveats, and they agreed to that, and here we are.
Did your students like you when you were a teacher? Were you a popular teacher?
So some of my students liked me. Some of my students did not.
Okay, I mean that's probably true for a lot of teachers.
And a lot of the ones who liked him are now employees at Pioneer.
That is true. I was able to bring along a lot of my. One of the values of that was I knew who was the best in town. So when I started building Pioneer, I was able to cherry pick the people who got not just how to code, but really got the problem, the business problem. And one of the things we really try to push at Pioneer is that the developers get the why. They're involved in really the business solution. They understand it. They get a cycle back for the reward.
So this next question, I'm at risk of kind of burying the lead by asking the question now, because I think it's the question. I know it's the first question that hit my mind when I read the news, and it's probably 5 years ago that I, from an NCPA perch, was pretty vocal that there's too many software systems in pharmacy. Now there's even more in medicine, but by too many, the challenge I was seeing was that when employers, payers, plan sponsors wanted to partner with pharmacies, you have to have the data. You have to have the data or you have nothing. And that's more true today than it's ever been. And with the disparate number of pharmacy systems, it was difficult for pharmacies to have a common denominator, for independent pharmacies to have a common denominator. And I could see the CVS and the Walgreens being able to go into a health system and say, look, you've got uniformity among my 9,000 stores, and independents couldn't say that. And in fact, it's something we've run into somewhat with the COVID vaccine distribution, that as we've advocated very loudly, because as I've said to many, that when the government, I was invited to help support some of the missions of Operation Warp Speed, and early on, the discussions about pharmacy were front and center. Pharmacy is going to be important. But the way that the government spelled pharmacy was with 3 letters, and the first one was a C, and the last one was an S.
Yeah.
And one of their reasons for that is because one of the government's reasons for why they're going to CVS and Walgreens for some of the vaccine distribution is because of the reporting technology and the uniformity among the reporting. We've been fairly successful in making the case that independents can do that too. But again, one of my thoughts a few years ago was the systems are too disparate. We need a common denominator among data reporting. So there's a little bit of, perhaps be careful what you ask for, because we've seen massive consolidation in the pharmacy management system space over the last, say, 5 or 6 years. And hearing from our members, some of that consolidation, they're not too happy about as far as the products as far as the changes to the products. They will, complain to me about some of after the consolidation, so the company didn't operate the same. They're not as satisfied, some of them, after the consolidation. So to someone who would say, here we go again, Pioneer's, great company, I don't know how fast you've expanded over the last 10 years, Jeff. I mean, you've probably gone from 0 to 4,000 or 5,000. I don't know how many pharmacies you have, but it's been phenomenal. What do you guys, Kraig and Jeff, to someone who says, to a customer who says, oh, great, now they're not going to invest. I've got private equity that's just going to want to squeeze as much money as possible out of this deal. I'm not going to have the same product. It's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same. How would you respond to someone with those concerns?
So the first thing I'd say is hold us accountable, Doug. So set one of these up every 6 months and hold us accountable to us doing what we say we're going to do. Is the first thing. I always say, hey, if it's important, measure it. So that's kind of the broad, a little bit facetious statement, but I'm sincere about that. So things, if you look at the two customer bases, of course, some things will change. The first thing to change is, geez, I hope everyone buys a Pioneer system, because I think they're fabulous. And so, as I told you, Jeff is going to be the one that decides what gets developed at Pioneer, not Kraig. That's the first thing. I hope Jeff's also doing what I think he's doing. He's building out his team to be able to do that as well. Because we always don't want it to be just Jeff. We want all the great people behind Jeff, the ones that are doing it. Because as Jeff continues to grow the business, that's a challenge Jeff's going to have to scale, right? And we hope we make that problem harder for him. And so the service model, technology model, that's Jeff's choice, not Kraig's choice. What Kraig will do is try to challenge to continuously improve it, and hopefully provide more investment where those decisions make sense. But the Pioneer platform will be the Pioneer platform. We're not combining platforms. That's not what we're doing. In fact, on the QS1 side, we've got a next generation long-term care system in development. And before the Pioneer acquisition, I was very worried that we had to have that platform serve both markets. We've got a very large long-term care base. We've got a large health system base as well. And that helps us. We're going to point that cloud-based solution directly at the long-term care market. And we're still going to make investments in the QS1 platform for sure. But I'll also be the first to say we're going to lead with the Pioneer platform. But we're not integrating those platforms. I think where we've got a responsibility, as I mentioned earlier, is we've got to create, for lack of a better word, that data lake across the entire installed base. People ask me, as soon as Francisco Partners made the investment, before we even acquired Pioneers, well, what are you going to do with the data? My answer is, well, I hope, sure as heck hope you make us do something with the data, because that's one of the only things that's going to save and revitalize independent pharmacy, because we're not leveraging the data across the platforms well enough. And we are absolutely going to make investments to build data solutions, reporting and aggregating solutions across all of the platforms. Without a doubt, yes, we are going to do that, because I think that's one of the only ways we're going to drive real clinical services. And more importantly, if you want to prove that those clinical services are better, and we always say that the independent pharmacy market provides the best clinical care, well, we've got to prove it. That means we got to measure it, and we got to track it. We've got to aggregate it and take it back to the payers and take it back to pharma and take it back to the government and say, see, this is why you should be treating independent pharmacy like a group, not like a bunch of 20,000 disparate stores. There's good value in that, because I think there's innovation that comes from that, but we've got to show that the best clinical care occurs there. And so I'll get off my soapbox on that one, but I feel very passionately about that.
Yeah,
Jeff?
I think one of the things, if you look at the market, Doug, companies sell for multiple reasons. And I believe strongly that, a matter of fact, one of my success measures was that one of the companies sold. If you talk to their owners, I believe you'll find they sold because of Pioneer, right? They sold because they were at the top of their game and really didn't feel like they'd be successful building a new pharmacy system. Pioneer, we don't have to build a new pharmacy system. We've designed a structure where we roll out updates every week. It's very current. We got lucky with a couple of different things about how technology rolled out at the same time. So, and if you look at questions that Kraig and them been having for us, is like, hey, is there areas that we can accelerate development on by putting a little money in? Now, 9 women can't make a baby in a month. So you can't always accelerate things successfully. You've got to do money correctly and those kind of things. But totally different story here as far as what position the company's in, the reason it sold. The reason we sold wasn't an owner who developed a company checking out, right? The owner of Pioneer didn't develop Pioneer. An employee of Pioneer developed Pioneer. And that employee is not going to a boat, right? And taking his newfound money and going to a boat. So it's different. I love what Kraig said, though. Hold us accountable. That's why, having you on this podcast as kind of representative independent pharmacy, and let you be the watch guard. Let you be the one who screams if it's not going right. Let it be every 3 months. Let it be, one of the things I've thought about this whole thing is I want to get closer to you. I want to get closer to Troy and that group. Makes me crazy when something happens and I don't know about it and I feel like, hey, I could have helped. It's a good thing about being on the innovation board, but we only meet twice a year. We're only going to do this together. We've got to get, and I would consider we were successful because of the smart people that we got on board on our platform early. People like Joe Moose and Amina, people who are big NCPA supporters. And we got to put fire on that. Bill Osborne joined us recently, got a Zoom call with him and a couple of his store managers this week to talk about, give us your ideas. We've got to continually do stuff that matters and try to develop the things that are most important to profitability and help them get where they need to go. One of the things that I'm going to say it out loud and might as well just say it out loud. I want to get rebates out of pharmacy. One of our goals, and if we have to do it with our 9,000 members or whatever, I want pharmacies to be buying on net price. I think rebates need to go. It's cloudy. It makes it hard to manage a business, which is already hard to manage. And especially like if you look at the thing in Arkansas, right? Hey, you have to pay me based on my cost, at least my cost and my cost to dispense. Oh, here, look, you paid me less than my cost. No, that's all funny money. You get a rebate. You got money coming over here. You got money coming in. That's not real. And you're just a cheater. And we don't want to be seen as cheaters. So one of the things I'll be asking for NCPA's help on is trying to talk the wholesalers into, we need to buy on a net price.
Well, so changing the pharmacy payment model, that's been NCPA's mantra for several years now. And part of that, Jeff, is, as you know, is rebates. Not only the rebates for the pharmacy, but the rebates that the manufacturers are paying. In fact, that's where the lion's share are. But the whole system is just, the whole payment system. I mean, Justice Roberts in the Supreme Court called it the PBM payment system Byzantine. Not sure where he got that word. I don't know. Maybe it was in one of the amici that was written that he read. But
sounds like a Doug word.
It may be. I don't know. But it is a Byzantine system that has to be made more clear. Jeff, you mentioned, that is a question I had, is from a financial standpoint. I know I assumed, and I'm assuming all the listeners, viewers assumed that when this deal went down that you did okay. I mean, you said, I was surprised. I thought you had some equity in Pioneer. I just in my mind, I thought, well, maybe you have a 5% stake or something like that, but you didn't have any. I'm not going to ask you, I know I said no holds barred, no cream puff questions, but I don't think it's fair to ask you how you did, but I'm assuming you did okay on the deal. So why not go buy a boat? You mentioned, why not, you're not old enough to retire. You're a young guy, younger every day is how I feel, but why not take your sack of money and I don't know, go find a drink with an umbrella and a warm beach.
Yeah, so I won't be. We definitely had a transaction. The Morrison-Dixon family shared a portion of their money that they made. There's no equity. The Dixons never shared. I think they had some early examples of having co-ownership in companies, and it was horrible back in the 30s or whatever, 30 years ago. But they did share some of the money with the company. I think we had matter of fact, we had an amazing, what was it, Friday? Was it, we had a day that everybody was happy. It would be great. And we Marcia and I called a couple of people on Zoom and told them about their transaction bonuses, and that was really felt good. And Marcia was like, "This feels so good. Can we do this every Friday?" I was like, "I wish we could. I wish we could just passing out money. That's always feels good." But they were kind. Certainly not kind enough to retire or to buy a big boat, but because they're an employee, they treated me good over the years, and I assume Francisco Partners will continue to treat me well. But just seemed like an owner because of my excitement about the business and the market. So I can see where one would be confused. But
okay, well that's yeah. I was surprised that you didn't have some equity piece in the deal. You know, going back to what some of the customers may be wondering about is the price. I mean, the cost. You know, what their monthly fees. What's kind of what's in store for them? You know, are they going to be paying more? Are they going to be paying less? What do you see there for both of you, Kraig and Jeff?
Yeah, pricing is set based on the market. Pioneer's not the most expensive system. It's not the cheapest. We kind of build our I guess kind of the way we price our product is that we try to eliminate add-ons. You know, we try to have an environment where most of the stuff that you really need for two reasons. Number one, because the pharmacy system needs to be efficient. But number two, that's one of our strategies for put it in the pharmacy system. You save them some money. They don't need this product. They don't need this add-on product. And no, so I don't see an ability. Pioneer may be amazing. We're the fastest growing pharmacy system in the country, but we're not the only pharmacy system. There are some other good pharmacy systems. There are some other systems with good net promoter scores. They're not the same pharmacy systems that if you looked back and you and I were talking 4 years ago and said, hey, the top three are this, they ain't the top three anymore by capability and happiness. One of the problems was taking two of the top ones and combining into the same company, I think. We took... With the RedSail deal, we took Pioneer, the best pharmacy system in the country, and a system that's not the best. Probably, one of the lower systems in the country. Not necessarily, though, because of the talent of the people, but just because 40-year-old technology. QS1 was the first pharmacy system in the United States. But today, what takes me a week probably takes them a year, maybe, and that sounds extreme, but maybe true. As smart as I might think I am, I don't know that I could have done as good as they've done. So you're going to take some really smart people with a really good history and a really good current product, and I think those things will go together well.
So, Kraig, I mean, you mentioned that the systems, the platforms won't be merged together.
Correct.
I guess I found that a little bit curious. Just and what Jeff said, I have heard from others. So. I know we're talking about Pioneer here, but why? And you mentioned you're going to invest in QS1, but I guess I'm just curious at that answer that you're not going to put them together because, again, from some of the things that Jeff just mentioned. So maybe you mentioned it before, but if you wouldn't mind, I think I missed it.
Yeah.
Why not put them together?
Yeah, 3 or 4 reasons. One is it would take forever and be really expensive and not end up with an elegant solution. And I think the Pioneer system is very well integrated, not only the workflow, but also with the support capabilities. And I don't think a default to Jeff, his technical expertise is greater than mine, but I think you'd end up with a bit of a monster if you tried to integrate those two things, and you'd solve for the least common denominator, not the best customer experience. So that's the first reason. The second reason is, again, if you look at the QS1 customer base, our customer base is a little bit more heterogeneous. And we've got the NRX platform. We also have a prime care platform that has a really great position in the long-term care space. And so we're taking our new investment, net new pharmacy platform, taking that towards the long-term care space because we have a great system here in Pioneer. The other two answers, that doesn't mean you won't see us take, for lack of a better word, some ancillary solutions across the platforms. I think And we've got to do this work. We haven't been allowed to do this work because we've been under, you got to go through the regulatory review process. So we're not legally allowed to do this work. But I think Jeff and I have a very similar view on the patient experience in this, and telehealth's here to stay, mobile's here to stay. How patients and pharmacists interact is going to transform, and that mobile experience needs to innovate as well. And I could see us looking and taking a common platform approach across those types of scenarios, and also across maybe some clinical scenarios or reporting type scenarios. But the core system, I think we would probably end up with a solution that neither customer base was really happy with.
Yeah. So let me, and maybe I heard that question a little bit differently. So if you look at before Pioneer, the way Kraig was headed was to build a new system. They're going to build a from scratch system to replace QS1. They've got the same base core for their long-term care product and for their retail product, and those are very different. If you look at the goals of those two systems, they're different. So now the plan is they can focus on just recreating that long-term care product for the long-term care market, because they got that next new product for the community side in PioneerRx. So for those people, you what you won't see is spending those 1,000 lines of code to do one little change in the QS1 product. You'll see them hardening QS1. You'll see them improving the customer support. QS1 a year ago, if they took it, had 32 different versions. I can't even imagine supporting that. They'll be trying to drive it to 1 or 2 versions that they can support. And for those people that QS1's working for, they'll try to make it better, stronger, easier to support. For those people who are looking for a new system, rather than leaving and going to one of those other products, they're going to hope that they come to PioneerRx. And, we're going to do some things to make that easy. We're also going to wrap the QS1 in some PioneerRx technologies. We're going to take some of our stuff that we really do well and maybe put it in the web or put it in some technologies to wrap them that make the guy who QS1's working for, give them some things to work with.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I think, and I think that'll be really interesting, because the long-term care community is one of the most solid areas for independent pharmacies right now. I mean, there's, obviously economic pressures everywhere we go, but on the LTC side, it's a way, because you've got this immensely fragile population. We're seeing it with the rollout of the vaccines. We're seeing, hopefully that'll be successful, but we are, early on, we're already seeing some lack of knowledge from the big chains about the vaccines, and it's the independent pharmacists who really know their customers. And, as far as knowing the customers, and both of you have mentioned the importance of data and being able to manage data. I've mentioned it as well. But one that's called a little bit of a sore point for independents that I've heard over the last, all my career, because I've always been in this space, is on their data. So I hear at least once a month, sometimes 10 times a month, just depending on what's trending. Hey, everyone's making, this is an independent pharmacist owner speaking. Hey, everyone, undefined, but everyone's making money off my data. And, everyone could include a pharmacy management system, could include pharma, could include some of the intermediaries that manage those data. I guess any thoughts for the audience? Any changes as far as the use of what the pharmacy owner believes is their data, and that they don't see the benefit of the use of that, or of the sale of those data. Could you guys, share your thoughts on that statement? I mean, is it true?
There are a couple of interesting things there. A lot of that concept, I think, comes back 5 to 10 years ago when, there was a dollar value. People like Symphony Health or IMS would actually pay for data for the manufacturers. IMS today doesn't pay for data anymore. Matter of fact, it's funny. You basically have to give data to IMS, but they're not willing to pay for it. And they have to. IMS has the specialty pharmacy and that kind of thing. If you want to be in specialty pharmacy, if you want the manufacturer reporting. So I think people have an illusion about how much money is in data. The money in data is proving clinical benefit. One of the things you see Kraig talk about, he'd love to see a reverse DRR fee where we're actually paying the pharmacy money for things. I'm a little skeptical about that being just data because there's not that much money there, but there's data related to clinical.
Yep.
Maybe so. And so we have to, now there's a ton of stuff going on in different ways. The wholesalers are giving data to manufacturers. There's a lot of data going on for a lot of different ways. And I think that feeling like this data is super expensive and valuable and I could be making more than I'm making on a script is a barrier to some of the things we're talking about doing. It's a barrier to the hospitals giving the pharmacy the data they should be. It's a barrier to these health information exchanges that we need. This is a public health issue. This data is not their data. It's the data about the customer. And 50% of those customers plus are paid for by our tax dollars, right? And so we've got to get away from this, I'm going to make a whole bunch of money about data, and really embrace we've got to get the data out there. We've got to share what we're doing in such a way. We've got to do collaborative care. And if we can't do that, we're not going to be around, right? Mm-hmm. If we take this locked up, I don't want anybody seeing my data. One of the positions that has been kind of controversial is the backfeed we do for SureScripts. We feed data back to SureScripts for using an ambulatory care scenario. So you come into the emergency room and you're unconscious, they can pull up and find out what else you're taking. And our point with that is, if you don't want to be part of the program, you're not a PioneerRx customer. We don't want you on here. Because what I don't want is this hospital, oh, that's a PioneerRx customer. We can't get that information. I don't want a manufacturer saying, oh, yeah, no, if you're a PioneerRx customer, it's a black hole. We can't figure out who's using our drug. The money in the end comes from the guy or the product. The manufacturer has this goal of making sure this product, especially in the specialty world, of making sure this product is successful and how they continue to improve it and getting this feedback on how they make the next level of it. I think data needs to be a lot more widespread than it is today. And that's controversial because everybody's mine and somebody's out there trying to look and steal my customers. If they can steal your customers based on your data, think about what you're doing in your store, not the data. The bad guy, the PBM's got your data anyway.
And Kraig, I want to frame that from a specialty pharmacy, but just before, there are federal laws that are going to be going into effect. They've been delayed because of the pandemic that open up data to patients. So it's very much patient focused. So it's going to be eye-opening for not only pharmacies, but all of healthcare as far as what patients will, per federal requirements, have access to. So that's going to change the world dramatically. But Kraig, I want to ask a similar question. But you mentioned a few minutes ago about specialty and some of the background you have there, and how you've been successful in enabling providers in the specialty realm to compete against. Really, there's 4 specialty companies that have 70%. 4 specialty pharmacies, all mail order except for one, that have 70% of the specialty marketplace, and 3 of those 4 are the big PBMs who steer the specialty prescriptions to their own mail order pharmacy. It's a big problem for independents.
Yep.
How would you see the new company, RedSail, with Pioneer, being able to help free up that marketplace to allow more specialty patients to walk into their local pharmacy versus being steered into to UPS or FedEx?
That's a great topic. I'll use, this isn't a TrellisRx discussion. I'll use it specifically for this, right? So TrellisRx just serves health systems. And part of the strategy there was our belief that mail order is not the right way to treat most of these patients. The time to intervene is in the clinic with a pharmacist is how you drive improved outcomes. And also with some technology, it's a longer discussion. But so the Trellis has gone in and has been putting pharmacists in the oncology clinics, the Hep C clinics, the HIV clinics, and tracking baseline data, and then also the data post implementation not only for the health system, but also to aggregate across those health systems, because what do you really need? Well, the problem is these health systems are getting locked out of limited distribution drugs. They're getting locked out of the pharmacies. And so we've taken that data and put a spotlight on it. And so now the Trellis RX customers are getting access to all the LDDs, bar maybe one or two. The commercial payers are opening up their networks to the Trellis RX sponsored pharmacies, because the clinical data is so compelling. You can't argue with it. And I think that's the same mindset we've got to take into the independent space. We've got to figure out a way to put programs in place to test our thesis, and particularly with the e-care plans, et cetera, that the place to get care is through independent pharmacy, because we'll provide better adherence, we'll provide better clinical advice, whether it be specialty or chronic disease management, which is a great target, in my opinion, in a lot of these rural communities. And I think a real opportunity and obligation for us to go after. That's going to require us aggregating a lot of clinical data and then also clinical solutions. But if we want to open up these networks, you've got to prove that you're going to provide better clinical care. And that's going to require data, and a lot of it.
And Kraig and Jeff, you guys have both mentioned. You just mentioned being an aggregator,
yep,
and the importance of being a pharmacy aggregator. And again, whether there's lots of examples where independence. One of the best things about independent is that we're independent,
yep,
but it's also can be a disadvantage from especially in a world where someone wants that single signature authority. A partner, a plan sponsor, a government wants to say, someone take care of this for me with 10,000 pharmacies or 5,000 or 2,000. And whether it's data or other ways, there are ways that independents can still have some of that advantage or that characteristic. Do you see your company as a pharmacy aggregator? I think we know the answer to that, but I'll ask that and then also ask, how do you see it relative to CPSN? Do you see it? I mean, it's been a very complementary relationship between Pioneer and CPSN. Pioneer has been very helpful to CPSN. We appreciate that. But how do you see things going forward as RedSail, Pioneer as a pharmacy aggregator? Do you see that changing? How do you see the relationship between CPSN and RedSail from the standpoint of being a pharmacy aggregator?
Yeah, it's got to improve. When you look and keep getting better, QS1 and Pioneer, if you had to say who had the best relationship with CPSN, in my opinion, 3 months ago, you would have said Pioneer and QS1. I could be wrong, but from my view, that's who I think. I think you're going to see that wasn't because it wasn't accidental for either one of those companies. That I think their goals are aligned. They believe in what CPSN's doing and as an instrument, and I think you're just going to want to put that on steroids. I agree with you 100% about the technology, though. The best situation for independent pharmacy today would be if everybody was on the same pharmacy system. If that system was benevolent, and not trying to extract money from the independents, because exactly that. You have to be the thing that can bring these independents together where there are independent is the technology. An example of that is that 3 weeks ago, a company came to us and wanted to roll out 2 clinical programs. We rolled them out 2 weeks later. You cannot do that on most other platforms in the United States today. And we rolled it out. Our belief is that a pharmacist has to almost do it accidentally. It has to be in their workflow. They have to almost stumble upon it if they're going to do it and do it successfully. And that's how you kind of you hate to use the word control because you're not controlling anybody, but that's how you help them through technology. You make it so easy that they almost can't not do it.
So related to that, one of the complaints I hear from pharmacy management system vendors is, I hear actually on both sides. Sometimes NCPA is in the middle. We're hearing it from pharmacy management system vendors as corporate partners trying to, working with them to help our members, and we hear it from members. So we'll hear from members, my system doesn't do that. And occasionally we'll hear that with Pioneer, not that often, but we'll hear it with, fill in the blank. I wish my system would do that. And then we'll go to you, Jeff, or one of the other pharmacy management system vendors and said, we heard from an independent that said they'd really like for your system to do that. And I would say 95% of the time, the pharmacy management system vendor says, we do that. We've done that. We've had that, we updated that 3 years ago or whatever. And so it's a pretty common, I guess, conundrum that the systems can do more than what the user knows or what the user is using them for. How do you see the combined company? Is there a way to solve that? Is there a way to solve? I mean, it's not a new problem. Is there a way to solve for?
Yeah, when you figure it out, help me. Any ideas you have, help me. So that's
I can't tell you how many healthcare industries have the same exact problem.
Yeah. No, as always around here, we say it doesn't matter how amazing we are. If nobody uses it, then we stumble across Chris Cornelson. I don't know if you know him. Cornelson tells a great story. He went into a pharmacy, and he does a lot with nutrition supplements. And he gave them some ideas that actually made them a lot of money. And while he was there, he went in a room, and there were whiteboard and stuff on the whiteboard. And he's like, "What is this room?" And he's like, "Oh, this is our MedSync room." I was like, "Really? You have Pioneer? Let me show you some things." And he showed them some things about how they should doing their workflow to do MedSync and Pioneer. And the guy about 2 months later sent him a thank you card, handwritten thank you card. Oh wow, I'm getting this thank you card. He's thanking me for all the money I'm making. Nope, he thanked him for helping him with MedSync. So. It kind of tells you the example there is that, a lot of times the Dale and the lot, helping me with, he changed it. Putting a little money in his pocket wasn't as important as changing his life and the day and how it felt in the pharmacy and stuff like that. But we run up on that again and again and again, and we're constantly thinking about how do we get more people? How do we get more than 50 or 100 people in our webinar? How do we get more than, 500 of our 45,000 users at our Connect conference to learn? How do we interrupt them? And some of that's going to be training, and some of that is going to be just the systems just got to do it. Great example out of CPSN. They had somebody who was just killing it for care plans. They were really just knocking it out of the park. Not only just the fact that they were submitting them, but the quality of what they were writing. And so a group there got together and contacted them and said, "Hey, you guys are doing a great job. What are you doing to do this so well?" And they were like, "We didn't know we were doing care plans." and what's funny is the first response from CPSN, from the clinical people, was, "Oh, no. If there wasn't pain, it's not any good, right? If you didn't suffer, you're not providing quality." But you go back and you go, no, look at what they're providing. They were doing their job. They were recording their interactions in MedSync. They were recording it in the system where it worked for them to store it for what they were doing. They're being good clinical pharmacists. And that stuff was just taking care of itself. And that's what we got to do more of. And that's where we got to take that next step in investment and getting smart people and really thinking, how does it just happen? How do they trip into it? How do they, if they're doing their job and they're doing it well, which we think they all are, how do we have their job fall into their pathway in such a way that they do these amazing things? And hey, welcome to, that's as important to doing us as changing how the employees clock in for X, is really helping them with a common technology to do the things better, just of course what they're doing.
And as you mentioned, in workflow.
Yep.
In workflow, so it's easy, and then also a lot of times our members, and you know this, they don't realize it's there until they need it. There's pain, and they say, I need this, I want this, and that's when the learning moment happens. But to their defense, they're just bombarded with so much information that I think, to the extent that information can be consolidated to say, this is the most important thing you need to do, I think that's helpful to members. I know that's something that we talk a lot about at NCPA, because we know there's, the owner's getting hit from all sides with information, and it's hard to filter sometimes which thing is the most important thing. So, but yeah, tapping into the full potential of the system is.
We also got to continue the soft skills support for the pharmacies and teaching classes about how to establish goals and how to plan things, how to say this week, not to try to do too many things, what's the one thing I'm going to do this week to make my pharmacy better? Not just get into this, I'm just, walking around the court dribbling the ball, right? I'm and some of that's going to be the getting them, trying to connect more people. One of the reasons we're doing these podcasts is try to connect people to be inspired to learn those things, to make changes, to connect them with people like you and Amina and who are really doing stuff and really dedicating themselves to the profession.
And so just to follow on CPSN, you see that partnership continuing to grow, that synergy, Kraig, I guess, is that what you see?
Yeah. I think it's critical, actually.
So just as we kind of wind down here a little bit, you both have mentioned the book Good to Great as being influential in your careers. And, as I love that book too. And as I look back at it, it's gotten a little bit dated, but I think a lot of the fundamentals are still true. Jim Collins also wrote another book called Built to Last.
Great book too.
Also a great book. And in that book, it talks about the importance of, it gives some examples of companies that really were built around the personality of a leader. As I recall, I think like Jack Welch from General Electric was one of the examples where the company flourished under him. And when he left, it didn't. And so, in this podcast, we've talked a lot about, not to build you up too much, Jeff, but the importance of you to this transaction and to this transition and to the company. So, learning from Jim Collins' books, what's the plan? So that's great that Jeff's here. Jeff's a visionary, partnering with you, Kraig, on the strategic side. I like that comparison that you made. But what are you putting in place for this company to be there in, 5 years, 10 years from now? Jeff, one day you will retire, no time soon. But what are you putting in place? And as a corollary follow-up, private equity companies are not known for holding companies for a long time. So where do you see things going, both for a company really foundationally built around a visionary of one person with a great team and owned by private equity that, at some point they're going to flip the company at some point. I mean, that's what private equity firms do.
100% certainty, someday Francisco Partners will not own this company. We
Absolutely.
may be public. We may spin the company public. We may take it private with some management, but with 100% certainty, it's true. I think there's a couple things. One is actually very early on, Jeff and I were chatting about this, because when you put yourself in Francisco Partners' shoes, when we go to buy Pioneer and you're doing the due diligence, and I listened to a bunch of podcasts. I listened to the podcast he did with you, et cetera, et cetera. You go out in the marketplace, you talk to customers. Jeff's a very provocative personality in the space. As Francisco Partners, you go, what do we do if Jeff gets hit by a bus next week? Well, if Jeff gets hit by a bus next week, we got problems. But what we don't talk a lot about is the great team right behind Jeff. We probably should do a better job doing that. I think there are two things that I would highlight. And very early on, I actually asked Jeff that same question. Like I said, Jeff, 5 years from now, you may or may not want to be doing this. You may want to go do your next startup. I've got a responsibility to really think about that. And you've got a responsibility because you've built a great business, and you only get to do that a couple times in your life. And I know from talking to Jeff, because I think he thinks about the same thing that I do. That's a really important, prideful thing. You want the company that you built to continue to perpetuate beyond your time with it. So we got to think about that. Number one, the area you mentioned very early on, where Jeff and I's relationship, which has been really terrific, and I also think he and I will debate a lot, which I think will be core to us being successful. If we're not, people should really worry. But one of the things, Jeff will talk a lot about people over process. And I think that's very true to how Jeff has built the company. I'm very much people and process. And I think part of the way you build the last as you continue to grow is you've got to do both, but you've got to have really great talent. And I think the answer to the question is someone who just came in kind of as the outsider observing and learning from the Pioneer business as we were trying to think about the investment is, talk to Jeff's leadership team. It isn't just Jeff. He's got a brilliant team that we've got to make sure we're developing and continuing to invest in would be my other answer. Jeff? Yeah,
no, I'm 100% there. So I have a great group that's been with me, some of them the whole time. The girl over customer service was one of my students. She's a programmer who went on to get her MBA. She's amazing. So you just, they would not have purchased the company had it just been a Jeff Key show. So there is depth in it. There's depth that we want to continue to develop, and they've got a great group to help us do that. So super, super talented group that they have, and I think we're all going to school, and it's going to be exciting. To me, again, Doug, I know you had some hesitation in doing this because you didn't want this to be a powder puff piece, but I really appreciate you doing it. I know you're a busy guy. Again, thank you for all the work you did on the Supreme Court case. That's incredible. I know you do way more than that with lots of wins for independent pharmacy, and appreciate it. And I'm sincere about I want our relationship on steroids. I know we do a lot of stuff together, probably kicked off with, I think Marcia and I came to see you guys about 4 or 5 years ago and set up there, but we really cannot do this by ourselves. The whole concept of not doing this by ourselves is why we went with RedSail, and we can't do this without really working close together with the other people who really care about independent pharmacy.
Well, we agree with that 100%. And I think this has been good. Both the podcast you guys did with me a couple months ago, and then this podcast for getting to know each other a little bit from, a personal level. I think that's been good. Kraig, it's a real pleasure to get to meet you, and just for both of you, to the extent I was able to find some background research on you, that helped me get to know you as a human. Yeah. Which is good. I think that's always good to know each other on a human level. So, yeah, we can't do it by ourselves, whether it's RedSail or NCPA. It's got to be any one of us is too small to do it ourselves. So,
if I can help you, just don't hesitate to call. We want to do this together.
Thank you for listening to this Catalyst podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and/or following us. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts to help us reach more amazing pharmacy people like you. Follow PioneerRx on your preferred social media platform for the latest up-to-date pharmacy news and content.